Hi, guys and ladies. Welcome back to another episode. This is episode number 6 of the podcast. My name is December Matsietsi. Now, this week we're going to be talking about the different roles that you find in a data science field. Data science is quite a new field, and there are different roles that are specific that you can find there. Some of these roles share functions with business intelligence, but we are really going to be looking at those different type of roles. If you're asking yourself what type of roles am I going to be looking at, we're looking at data architect, we're looking at data engineer or SQL developer, and we're looking at a database administrator or a DBA. We're also looking at a data analyst, we're looking at data visualization specialist, and a machine learning engineer. Some of us, we're thinking that data analyst is the job role, but it turns out it is a whole new field. We'll talk about that one just after our theme song. I have recently given in to my internal desire to know more about data science. Actually, I found myself enrolling in the Corporate Finance Institute. There's a certification in business intelligence and data analysis. And for me, I was just thinking, you know what, I just want to upgrade my skills in terms of BI. But I was quite amazed on how they covered the whole data science portion of it. And it was quite eye opening for me. And what became quite important for me that the guys done very, very well was to make me realize that all the different roles are not just synonymous to business intelligence, but they can actually work hand in hand, even in the data science field. My mind was a little bit close up because when I'm looking at where I worked, the data team was one huge department or one huge function that has data science, it had business intelligence, and it had all of those different, data split within itself. And I thought to myself, hang on a second, data science is advanced analytics only, and business intelligence is everything else that has to do with data. But to my surprise, the team was quite efficient being set up that way because some of the data manipulation that the data engineers were doing while they were sitting under the business intelligence um, department, they were actually sharing with the data science department. But if you were to create a new data science department from scratch, the course actually made me realize that you might be stealing some of the functions that you see that are available in the business intelligence world and bring them for over to your data science world. So just looking at that, me high level, just to say this is what people that are doing, and you might start your career in business intelligence thinking that you're just a data analyst, but you might actually find yourself being compatible in a data science field also. So you just don't stop yourself to say, oh, hang on a second, I belong in this field, I cannot jump across. But all of this, if you missed our episode 4, don't panic, because in episode 4 I tried to explain what is what is data science, and in there I explained that data science has got 5 stage process, and in the stages, we're just gonna go through them just now, but you'll realize that in those 5 stages, each role has got something to play in the stage itself. And if you say you're thinking that a data science is the person that does everything, you might somehow be mistaken, because you might be shook when I tell you what the job title of that person that's supposed to do everything back to back. But let's just take it one step further. The five stages, if you still could not remember them or you listen in a hurry, they are: the first stage is data collection and storage. That's where you bring in the data together. You're making sure that there's no duplicates. It follows whatever type of um, governance rules, and then you store it. The second one is transforming data for projects. So not every project will have the same data, and in that case, this is where you find yourself having different data that is catered for different departments. The finance department will have its own data. The projects departments will have its own data. The retail department will have its own data, type of thing. So you start preparing your data for different projects that you're looking at. Stage number three is doing statistical and predictive analysis. This is where you, when we're talking about statistical analysis and predictive analysis, it's where you are bringing in all that data together so that you can start to say, oh, what is the data telling me? What does it look like? And then you start actually going in and creating what we call a data model. A data model, when we're in that stage, it's just you connecting all the data connections, sales data, marketing data, whatever data, HR data, bring it together, and you're creating whatever sort of a mud, and you start doing your own predictive and statistical analysis in there. And then stage number four is, on stage number three, since you brought in the data together, we call that a data model. This is where you're doing, on stage number four, you're doing model evaluation, and you start visualizing whatever you are seeing in the model. Some of the models might be telling us, might be giving us, the new pricing structure. This is where you start to say, is it really feasible for us to have this new pricing structure? And then you go forward looking that way. So once you realize what your new model look like, you start evaluating that model. And then last stage is sharing insight. This is what I was used to, because we were always jumping from one boardroom to the next. We used to data scientists, or most of them being on stage number five, where they start to tell you what's the impact of an increase in interest rates, for instance. They'll tell you so many people will fall off, blah, blah, blah. And we all see data science as management on that level. And then we really understand sometimes what the rest of the five stages really involve. This is just in high level what does the five stages quite involve. And then once you realize that once you have started engaging with Menko and they understand the frustration that you're going through, they might actually come to the party to help you out with the frustrations that you're looking at in your data science department. They're just not looking for somewhere else that you become frustrated and they're waiting for answers and nobody's doing stuff and the bot is actually getting irritated with us. And while we're looking at the five stages, there are seven roles that are quite particular in these stages. And the seven roles in the data science field, um, you can say, um, the field itself, it's sometimes general, and the job description is the one that actually tells you where do you sit in. Because sometimes I've heard of people getting this data science thing, but only to find out that they're actually data engineer. But maybe the hiring manager was not clear on the fact that you are in the data science field, but we will ask you to hop between different stages out of the five stages, between collection and data, model evaluation, statistical analysis, when you might find yourself spending more time on the collection of data because maybe the department is new. And in so doing, you find yourself becoming a data engineer instead of being a real data science, for instance. So in that case, um, you find yourself hopping between different stages. But what is well known is, if we're looking at data science as the big field, just at the beginning here, where you do data collection and probably just data collection and collection is what is normally done by a data architect. um, they have special abilities of actually sitting down there and be able to do the data governance, and they belong on that field. So That first stage, if you find yourself being a data scientist and all you're doing is data collection, you might as well just swap your title or your career to a data architect, because that's what data architects are actually quite doing. The role is jumping between data collection. Sometime a role could jump between data collection and storage, and also transforming data for analysis, or transforming data for whatever project. So once a architect has already collected the data, you might have a little bit of a bigger role to say, we want you to guys to go collect the data, but you're doing it for the finance department. And that guy that sits there, we call them a SQL developer or a data engineer, because they are uh, hopping between data collection and also preparing the data for projects. It could either be a data engineer, SQL developer, or a database administrator. They play quite a huge role in just collecting all the data and making it specific for that project. So if you find yourself just collecting data, you're a data architect. If you find yourself collecting specific data for a specific project, you might find yourself as either a data engineer, a database administrator, or SQL developer. Other roles might require you to do a little bit more. They might require you to just do the data collection for projects. And then because the data is already in the database, you're not going to put data into the database. All you're doing is you're collecting the data that's in the database, and then you're extracting it for a certain project. So in my case, I was doing it for a finance department. You find yourself extracting that data, and then after that, you find yourself doing statistical or predictive analysis on it to say, oh, let's just bring it together. This is where the mean, the mode is. And you might sometimes find yourself doing model evaluation at the whatever model evaluation and visualization. And in that case, you become what is commonly known as a data analyst. Data analyst is a common role that's being advertised, especially in data, because it actually crosses from it's for somebody else who can manipulate the data that you already collected and give you insights out of it. So it ranges to a bigger role. And when we're always talking about your career in data, most people are talking about being a data analyst, because a data analyst is quite broad. But if you find yourself not just being interested in the whole statistical modeling and stuff, and you're thinking to yourself, do I still have a career in data science? Don't stress. There's already somebody else called a data visualization specialist. Data visualization specialist also doubles between uh, business intelligence and data science. So what they do is they sit between um, model evaluation and visualization and sharing ideas, and sometimes they can do statistics and predictive analysis. So they don't have to deal with data. You collect your own data. Once you have collected your own data, you just tell them, here's the data connection. He takes the data connection and he says, I'm going to take the connection. I'm going to try to build a dashboard out of that. So those people are data visualization specialists. Those are the people that you call to say, we have our data. Our data doesn't have a duplicate. It's perfect. We just want you to come help us visualize it so that our main meetings or exco meetings can actually run much better. Those are called the data visualization specialists. What we know currently being advertised as this role called a data science, sometimes you might find yourself doubling into either um, data collection, like I said, you're doubling into uh, gathering data for projects, and then you're also doing statistics and predictive analysis, and then also you are doing maybe model evaluation and visualization. You find yourself in that four of the five stages, and then we're like, okay, then you're a data scientist, because you can collect the data, you can make some data, make some numbers, make it look nice, and you can also create dashboards. Here's a title called a data science. of which sometimes based on where your strengths are, you might find yourself just sitting on model creation or maybe statistical and predictive analysis and saying, "Oh, the other ones are too much for me." But the ideal job title that actually covers the whole 5 stages is called a machine learning engineer. A machine learning engineer is the guy who what we normally expect from a data scientist. They can do that. They can um, they know a lot of programming languages. They know a lot of tools that they can use, and they are proficient in all of those tools, and they are able to um, run their own robots, hence machine learning, run their own robots so that the robots can actually be programmed to do what they desire to be received. And on top of that, they can even go to the boardroom and share the insights themselves. So these are quite rare people. When we putting out a role and we're thinking we're looking for a data scientist, in our head we're thinking about a machine learning engineer, a person who can do everything and code and can be able to run robots and we want that person in our team. But in actual essence, we end up finding people with this role of a data scientist that are more like data analyst or sometimes more of a data visualization specialist, and not just be this machine learning data scientist person that we would like to have. Just maybe in high level, let me just go through what does each of this role quite entails. Let's look at a data architect. So a data architect, the duties are to create data strategy, including how, where, when, what data is stored. So data architect, think about when you build your house, you need an architect. An architect role is to actually build the data from scratch. They are IT professionals responsible for defining the policies, procedures, models, and technologies to be used in collecting, organizing, storing, and accessing the company's information according to this website that I found called Tech Target. So they are responsible. Those people are here to build your data. They are the architects of data. And they work hand in hand with organizational architects, because the organizational architects does the same thing. They say inside this organization, for us to receive our 3-year goals or whatever the case is that we want to achieve, it is better to have these functions. And the data architect come over and say, if you want those functions, you must store your data in this case. It must be updated in this case. And there's a lot of demand for these people out there. The primary task is to drive and transform the data capabilities and enable a data-driven culture across the group or across the whole organization, and therefore work with other architects and platform teams to ensure data is managed as an asset and is centralized, standardized, and consistent manner to maintain consistency and quality using mature technologies and emerging data practices. So they can work on SQL or no SQL technologies, distributed computing framework, and techniques to make the right tools and the technology choices. Those are data architects. Second one, data engineers. And according to Coursera, of which there's very, very good courses out there that you can take if you want to become a data engineer. But according to Coursera, data engineers work in a variety of settings to build systems that collect, manage, and convert raw data into usable information for data science and business analysis to interpret. So they are the ones that start. The other ones governs the data. These ones, they start working onto the data. And if you want to do, you can actually go into the Google if you want to be a data engineer and you are an enthusiast. You can go into Google and it will help you. The certificate will help you design, build, operationalize, secure, and monitor data processing systems with a particular emphasis on security, compliance, scalability, and efficiency, reliability and fidelity, and flexibility and portability of data itself. So a data engineer, very, very quite nice. The most common known number three is the data analyst. So data analysts are the ones that actually can work on various areas. So data analyst gathers, cleans, and studies the data sets to help solve problems. They do this by focusing on the analysis that are all that we are almost familiar with, the type of analysis that we know. They source the data, formulas, data models, pivot table, and visuals. So when we start working on those pivot tables and we're making it easier for you to understand, this is where data analysis were coming in. And when I started my career 2008 and I saw the guys, what we will call them a finance MIS, they were actually data analysts. They were helping us analyze the data and create cost reports so that we can do management reporting. So they work with various tools, including Microsoft Excel, which is one of my favorite, Google Sheets, which I'm very, a little bit there. SQL, which is SQL Server Management Studios. Tableau, R or Python, SAS, which is, known everywhere. Microsoft Power BI. And sometimes they use this thing called Jupyter Notebooks. So they are able to work on almost everything because they're expected. They are the if you were to go out and look at an analyst, you have a better bet looking at the data analyst. So you're looking at somebody else with a wide range of talents. Okay, just moving on to another field. This one is another job title. This one is called a database administrator or a DBA. So database administrator does a lot of things. And what they're doing is, I went into Oracle because I was like, okay, tell me what does a database administrator actually quite do? And they are quite responsible for maintaining, securing, and operating database and ensuring that the data is correctly stored and retrieved. So there are different type of database administrators that are out there. So you can look at, I only picked up the seven that I thought, okay, this is quite, maybe we can work on the seven. The first one are called system administrators, who are responsible for the overall management and upkeep of the computer system. Second ones are data modelers. They're also, database administrators, because they create and maintain data models that depict the relationship between the data elements. So data modelers, you go to them to say, oh, can you join this tables together? They will be the one that help you build a model. So they are not data analysts, but rather they're database administrators called data modelers. Another one, third one, is application DBAs, which are quite responsible for the administrating the database that supports applications. If you have a software in your workplace and you need somebody else to help you with the data that comes out of there, they can use Google Analytics or whatever the case is, to whatever tool that they use, but they are responsible for that data that comes out of that application. So they are called application database administrators. Other ones are task-oriented DBAs, focusing on particular areas of database administration, such as backup, recovery, security. So these guys are the ones that you would find into the IT department, the back office, the IT department, to say, okay, let's just, back up the data, make sure that the data is up. When something happens, the data just doesn't go disappear. Other ones are performance analysts, which monitor the database performance and identify areas where improvement is needed. So they sit when you pick up a call and you're like, hey, my data is taking too long to run. These are the guys that will tell you what needs to be done. Data warehouse administrators, number 6 from this list of database administrators, and because they manage data that is stored for business intelligence or decision support application. They are responsible for extracting data correctly, transforming the data, and loading it into the data warehouse. The last one I'll call the cloud database administrators. I know most of us are moving into the cloud, so they are responsible for administering a database hosted into a cloud computing like AWS or Azure, provision and managing database instances, setting up application and high availability, and monitoring database performances. So just that looking at database administrator, I mean, there's so much that you can do just to make sure that the data is there in the data science field. So there's all these other people that you might actually need to run the application that you're looking for. Okay, just moving on, we're going to be looking at the guy who's going to be helping us with the visualization. He's called a data visualization specialist. They are, what they do is they turn data into insights, and, and and those insights, they turn them into meaningful visuals, so that they can help the Menko, take decisions. So they can make a lot of, they can use a lot of things. In this case, they can use SQL data extract. They can schedule jobs. They can do API integration. They can use what we call views in data. So you have views there. They can also work on that. They know how to work with clients and teams, and they are normally subject matter experts to strategies on data-driven business process improvement, transitioning Excel based reporting into a normal automated nice dashboards. These are the guys that you go into, and communicating with data visualization vendors. They are the guys that need to tell you what software you should be buying for you to get these visuals that you're looking for. So those are the visualization specialists. The machine learning guy, machine learning engineer, because he runs everything, and they can link all models, they can code. I mean, this guy is like, the master of the data science field. Is part of the computer science field and specifically concerned with artificial intelligence, and uses algorithms to interpret data in a way that replicates how humans learn. Machine learning engineers act as critical members of the data team, and their task can involve researching, building, and designing the artificial intelligence responsible for machine learning, and maintaining and improving existing artificial intelligence system. I still go back to my module in optimization when I walked in and were told that at the end of the semester we should be the one who are coding the system that does this, because you cannot always find a robotics process automation that's ready for you. You might have to create one from scratch. What we found out, just in closing, is that what is needed from people like data scientists is we want the people that are able to, help you work with whatever software that you've picked. They must be able to, get the meanings out of it, and the platform that you're going to be looking at, that they must be able to work, help you procure that platform. The platform must, allow them to work together in groups, because data scientists don't work in solo. As much as we think that you can just hire one person and you give them R or Python and they are ready to go, they don't work in solo. They work, together. And the platforms that they work on must prioritize integration and flexibility, especially for resources that are found online, like GitHub and GitLabs and Bitbuckets. All those resources, they must be able to have access to those resources. Must have enterprise grade capabilities, so that when they want to go enterprise route, they can just do that. Just in closing, like we said, the data science field is quite new. It just started being written in articles just here in 2002, and before you know it, by 2018, the title just started popping up: data science, data science, data science. So it's quite new, and the universities are all coming up with courses right now to say, what is the data science, what is not. And it was quite important for me to just sit and just explain in high level on this podcast, just to say there are various roles that you can have in a data science field, and you mustn't feel ashamed. If you are particularly interested, maybe in visualization, you're interested in data specification or database administration, there's various ways that you could be. You can't just be thrown away to say, oh, you are an old dinosaur. You can actually participate in the data science field and create meaningful results. Because at one point, I always say, you don't want to burden a machine learning specialist or a machine learning engineer with menial tasks. You'd rather have somebody else who can help the machine learning engineer, prepare the data, make sure that it's right. And you might be that person that actually play a crucial role in preparing the data, making sure that it's ready before analysis could happen. So I hope you got a nice overview of what data science roles are there. And yeah, we'll talk about what roles exist like this in business analysis in episode number 7. So stay tuned for episode number 7. See you then.